Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, 8 Up Bass Fishing. Today I am going to break down our next tournament waters. We are going to be putting in at a boat ramp at Mullet Lake Park. This boat ramp is located on the St. Johns River in between Lake Harney and Lake Monroe, both natural formed lakes, part of the St. Johns River system here to the south in the upper headwaters of the St. Johns River. This area has just started to reopen and available to fishermen. The boat ramp itself just opened a few days ago. This is all as a result of the hurricane that came through in October and high flooding conditions. For my first couple trips out, I have found that the water is back down within the banks of the river and at a level that is normal high water, if you will. So we're not at flood stage anymore. There are still a few extra no wake zones outside the normal ones that have been established for years. But the water is still coming down. It has cleaned up pretty well. But a lot of damage was done when the hurricane came through between the lakes themselves, the river, a lot of the vegetation, the lily pads, a lot of your reeds that don't handle being underwater for long periods of time have been killed off because of the extremely high waters that we had after that hurricane, now going on several months later. Should be an interesting tournament. Everyone's got to figure out the same puzzle. Hopefully we can figure it out on our own. Check it out. Tell me what you think. Hopefully give you a pretty good understanding of the area when I'm all done. Thanks. Okay, so here is our breakdown. This is the body of water that I'm going to cover today. We're going to cover down here from the south, around the Puzzle Lake area, all the way up to where the river comes out the other side of Lake Monroe and starts its northern turn up to where the Wekiva River joins it. So that's going to give us a pretty good area to cover. This area has just started to reopen to boat traffic and so forth, including the ramp that we're fishing out of, which would be Mullet Lake Park, located right here, kind of centrally located in the middle of everything. This has a lot of twists and turns. There are areas that have houses. There are areas that are barren with nothing there, but it's all part of the St. Johns River. There's 3 lakes involved in this. Lake Jessup does not really come into play. I have not talked to anybody in decades that has ever caught fish in Lake Jessup, so pretty much everyone seems to stay out of Lake Jessup. Not sure why, not sure what's going on with it, but it just seems to be a non-factor unless you're crappie fishing. So I'm going to be concentrating mainly on this area known as Puzzle Lake. As you can see by the picture, it looks like a puzzle. Your main lake would be Lake Harney, and then the lake to the north would be Lake Monroe, which is on the shorelines of Sanford, Florida. Again, these are natural formed lakes off of the St. Johns River. The area has just recently started to reopen again because of flooding that occurred due to the hurricane back in October. The water's been that high for that long, caused a lot of problems, caused a lot of damage to the vegetation and everything in between. Again, the boat ramp that we're using here at Mullet Lake Park is kind of in the middle of it all. We'll start off. One thing you'll notice about this section of the St. Johns River from Lake Monroe to the top of Lake Harney here is the fact that the north and south running St. Johns River really is running more east to west, and that would be the direction of the current flow as well. At the other side of Lake Monroe, it does start its turn to the north, where it continues that path pretty much all the way up through to Jacksonville. Some key points, as I mentioned before, this area can be very popular down here in the area called Puzzle Lake. To get to the top of Puzzle Lake, basically right here, is from our boat ramp would take you about 18.52 miles running the actual river. So pretty good little boat ride. There are a couple no wake zones on the other side of Lake Harney, but once you get down here, there's really nothing as far as any kind of wake zones, except for right around Highway 46 bridge. You have a small no wake zone right here. Then everything down here, it's just tricky, especially with the water being high like it is. It's almost back within its normal confines, but not quite. So as you can see pictured here, there are a lot of cuts. The darker blue, as you can see, is going to be your main deeper water, your main river channel running down. But there are lots of little cross cuts. Certain times of the year, a lot of these places will have just a couple inches of water over them, so it can make navigation very difficult. Besides all the different turns and so forth, you'll notice there's some reed island, shoreline vegetation that comes into play, a lot of bends. Your average depth of the St. Johns River is 7 foot or so. Right now it's up a little more, probably closer to 9 foot, 8 to 9 foot depth. There are spots that have deep cuts and around points and so forth where you can find deeper channels. You can find cut banks, deeper water, a lot of different things. One of the things I did notice on a couple of my first practices is a lot of the vegetation has suffered a lot of damage from the high water. A lot of the pencil reeds that surround areas like this do not do well with water way up on them or completely submerged under the water, as was the case for a lot of them during the high water conditions. So as the water dropped, a lot of these plants have died. Hopefully they'll make a rebound. Also, another thing that has happened up and down throughout the river system is a lot of the large root systems for the lily pads have been uprooted and are floating and actually become a hazard to boat traffic. A lot of the very large lily pad fields that have been there historically have been reduced almost to a third of the size of what they are. This is important in the fact that a lot of these little sloughs and off areas on this river system are not hard bottom, so they will have a unique thing for the bass to spawn on is they use the large roots at the bottom of these lily pads because they are hard and can be uncovered. So with that being cut down, that's really made the search very hard. You'll notice running off of the main St. John's Channel is the Little Econolachi, I think is the actual name. This runs to the south and then back towards the west, towards Orlando, Florida. It has some very deep, its average depth is also in the 8 foot range. It has some deep corners, deep turns, a fair amount of current flowing towards the St. Johns River. So from upstream towards the St. Johns River back this way. This spot right here, obviously you've got the joint between two current flows as the Econ joins the St. Johns River right here. Can make for some definitely interesting fishing. All this green that you see filled in by the map right now is not there. That vegetation has just been wiped out. But there are some opportunities up in a lot of fallen timber, a lot of logs, and again, your different turns with deep corners and so forth up the Little Econ. And again, lots of little fingers to explore. Most of the light water that you see here is, in this case, it's showing on the map 1 foot. Right now it's got maybe 2-3 foot of water over top of it. But again, it's a mucky bottom, and if the lily pads are gone, it makes it difficult. Going back to the north, heading back towards the boat ramp, is Lake Harney. Again, a big naturally formed lake. It's a very, very shallow dish lake. Right now, it's very difficult. You would have to idle your boat all the way up, for instance, to get up to here and beach your boat. You're going to be, even with the higher water, it's such a shallow dip that you would be in 1.5 to 2 foot of water as you approach dry land. So again, it's a very shallow bowl. This lake used to be filled with eelgrass all around the edges, especially on this shoreline. But all that's been gone from hurricanes years past. Basically, most of the pattern are the different lily pad fields, and then looking for your shell beds, which there are still a lot of active shell beds. It's just a matter of finding the right shell bed and the fish relating to it. You do have a couple deep holes out here. Then the spoil bank coming into the St. Johns River on the other side. At this point, this marker right here is your first marker beacon for the St. Johns River as it travels to the north, indicating that they consider this section going forward navigable by most any boat, large boats included, sailboats, big ships. You will find channel markers going up through here. As you start up north in the river, you have another creek called Deep Creek. Again, it goes way up into the north. Again, it's a fairly deep creek. A lot of tree line, cypress trees, vegetation, a lot of bends and turns. The water seems to get very tannic the further you go up in there, has been my experience over the years. But again, it's another alternative. Up in here, you start getting some old boat docks, old buildings and so forth, where there's some houses ringing the lake. Going forward, again, you have many sloughs off the main channel. These sloughs on average maintain 3 foot of water or so. They're a little higher now, obviously, but again, they're dependent on the lily pads and some of the reed vegetation, which has been severely damaged right now. The channel continuing north, again, you'll come up on stretches where you're going to have homes. And of course, if there's homes, there's going to be docks and seawalls that you can fish. Again, you have some of your deeper turns, some of your sloughs. A lot to work and look at as you're heading back through. You have some offshoot sloughs / lakes. Some of these will have some water in them. Can be good at times of the year, but again, a lot of vegetation's been damaged, and you make it all the way back to the boat ramp. Going to the north, you come up to an intersection right here where Snake Creek comes in, and you can run back up through Hickory Slough into this mud lake. There's some fishing opportunities up in there. It's still a very shallow lake. This channel, the main channel, is fairly deep and will run all the way through to this section, or you can take the main river channel going through these areas. Again, a few houses, a lot of area that has nothing developed as you're heading towards Lake Monroe. Again, there's a lot of cuts and spin-offs and sloughs and opportunities for shell beds. Everything going through here. As you continue all the way on, this would be Highway 415, a little restaurant under here, really good if you're out fishing and want to grab some lunch. From the boat ramp to that point at 415 is 5.94 miles, as we're again working ourselves to the north. Then just past it to this section right here is where they started Government Cut. At Government Cut, this is a straight through cut, navigable by big boats. with channel markers into Lake Monroe. Again, from the boat ramp to Government Cut is 6.68 miles. There's also the north channel of the river that naturally runs up through this way and out into Lake Monroe. Going across Lake Monroe, following the channel markers to, this would be I-4. That from the boat ramp is 12.98 miles. Also, it's very important that you follow the channel markers in most of this area because it is a marked channel and you can run at speed. Most of the rest of the lake on the shoreline marked by these red lines here that you can see, this is all protected area ringing the lake. You have a 3,000 foot buffer around the lake that is all idle zone. So approaching any of these spoil areas that you're seeing here, the old power plant up here to the north, which to get to that power plant from the boat ramp is 11.67 miles. This is all idle zone as you start to get close. On the north side of the lake, again, you have Bethel Cove. You have a neighborhood off of here. There are a few docks. There's a canal that runs up into it. Again, it's another lake that is very shallow as it approaches the shoreline. It's a very shallow dish. It also has very little vegetation left in it. There are some scattered areas out here on this spoil area where you have some high spots that had reeds. Again, a lot of these reeds have died off after this last hurricane. Hopefully they'll make a comeback. As you go under I-4, you're into the St. Johns River going north now. It starts to make that gradual turn heading up, and I'm covering up to today as far as the Wekiva River, which again runs back to the south heading towards Orlando. Again, it's a very narrow, a lot of channels, a lot of deep cuts, a lot of vegetation, fallen trees. Some of the things about, such as the Wekiva River, Deep Creek I mentioned before, and the Little Econ, these are all areas that it really narrows the playing field. So finding the fish, you can find them stacked up a little tighter because they just don't have as far to go, where some of the main points, especially in the river in this section, you have so many choices trying to narrow it down. I hope this gives you a good idea on this area and gives you some thoughts and ideas of where you might want to try going fishing. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Again, thanks for finding your way back to my channel, 8up Bass Fishing. I hope this breakdown on this area in particular is helpful to you. At least gives you a little bit better understanding of this section of the St. Johns River. It's quite a bit different than what you see on TV a lot with the pros fishing to the north up near Palatka, but it's still a very diverse and thriving waterway. It has taken a lot of damage from the hurricanes, as you'll see in some of the video that I post on here, but hopefully the fishing's there and we can figure out this piece of the puzzle for our tournament. Till next time, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. I appreciate you.